Hey y'all, it's Kim Alexander again from Houston, Texas with B-InPowerD. I want to apologize for our tardiness, but I always know when it's going to be a dope talk because something always happens. There's a misstep in some way, something goes wrong. And I am sitting with a woman who has known me, who I have known since probably the age of 12. So hold on to your britches because this is going to be an interesting conversation. She knows some secrets about me. I know some secrets about her. I am sitting with Shaneiree James, Shay, as we affectionately call her. We are together Harlem Nights. We are sister friends. We are God sisters. We are together forever. She is a beautiful mother of my two nieces who are growing like weeds and is driving me nuts. Um, she is now a resident of Maryland and she runs the Dames Group. She is an organizational developer. She is a teacher trainer guru. She is a centerer of human beings as well as organizations so that they may flourish, they may grow, they may reach their full potential. But as a mother, most importantly, she is an accountable community member who believes wholeheartedly in the idea that by teaching and training, we can develop a better world. So, Shay, hi, boo.
Hi, boo. Oh
How
my
are you?
gosh. Shay, I want to receive all of that love. I'm going to take a breath in it.
Yes, yes. Do that because we are ready. I am sharing our link right now to make sure all those who want to be a part of this conversation are a part of this conversation. Um, and I just want to start by like just giving you the floor and allowing you to share as much or as little as you would like about our beginnings and where we are now.
Shay. Well, I want to first say thank you when I receive. I receive oftentimes we shy away from the love that we are poured into by those of us who know us, and we are instantly gravitated towards giving a response back instead of just honoring and receiving the love that the person has just poured into you. So, sister, I want to receive what you just shared with the people who will receive this in the time that it is responsible for them to receive it. Whoever is here will receive, and those who watch it in alignment with the time that it is for them will also receive it. So I want to thank you for giving context to how you view me as a sister friend. And for those of you I've never had the opportunity of connecting with, my name is Shaneiree Dames. I go by Shay. I am the founder and CEO of the Dames Group and so much more. And I'm here to really pour into and hopefully share a little bit of how my story has helped me help others in a space of mental wellness and self-awareness,
Mhm.
and how that really informs the way that I parent and see my little humans as educators to me. I am a lifelong learner, and if we all inform that mindset, we definitely be in a place where we would learn more. So I am very blessed, having come off of Mother's Day, to be able to say that I am also learning from amazing little humans in my life. And very fortunate to sit here with my sister, who has not just known me, but I think has seen me evolve. We've seen each other evolve, but definitely seen me evolve into a girlhood, childhood, and motherhood, etc. So I'm excited to be in conversation with you today, sis. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm excited as well. I know we come from the same places. We've experienced a lot of the same things, and growing up in the crack epidemic, growing up in the crack era, knowing what that looks like and what it does to community. I think I want to start with what gave you drive to change your environment, your surroundings, to be different, to want to be more.
Yeah, that is, thank you for opening with a question that I think more people should probably hear, especially in times that we're living in now. That thinking about what drives you. And for me, it was inherently a knowing and a feeling that the life that I was living wasn't it.
Mm.
And so being able to immerse myself in different types of worlds, with this different types of people, with different types of cultures, and being educated by ferocious women who lived Sankofa principles and instilled those things within us, and in all walks of my education. I mean, from elementary school all the way through college, I can name a woman, or women in my life who have instilled those level of principles. And so for me, the drive came from a knowing that the circumstances that I was birthed in
Mm-hmm.
weren't the only ways to actually live life. And once I started to see that for my own with my own eyes, I started to explore what that looked like, and I loved it. I became, as my sister would say, a bougie girl. I became a bougie girl.
Yes, the epitome of bougie. Sometimes I have to wonder. It's like, what happened to me? Like,
you know,
yes, like
and then
I'm
the flip
like,
side
ooh,
of that is, I'm a nature girl at heart. So as much as I enjoy that the city living, I really really enjoy really being out in nature, and have always, and didn't realize that until I was about 13 years old. Like, oh, this is I could do this. um
and it's so funny because when we talk about my nieces, it's like you have one of you and one of me.
yes, 100%,
You
100%,
got one of you and one of me.
100%, 100%.
But I want to go
One of
back
them
to
don't
something
want
you
no
said.
parts. One of them said,
That's
don't want
right.
no parts. Don't touch it. Yeah.
That's right.
Unless it comes with a camping kind of dynamic. She don't want no
Yes,
parts.
absolutely. Um, but I want to go back to something that you said because I find it really interesting. Our reference point, I'll go back to it, remains the same, right? Our reference point is the environment in which we grew up in. And you said that you knew this was not it. It wasn't, that wasn't it. It wasn't all of it. And I often say, my 4 block radius wasn't my world, right? Like I understood that. I understood that really, really young because I was fortunate enough to travel. In all of the dysfunction, I had the ability to travel and to see different places. And it exposed me to the idea that people live differently and people's worlds were different. But I knew, despite that, I knew I didn't want that, but I still didn't know what could be.
Mhm.
So it was kind of this thing that I was always pushing towards, right? I was pushing towards different than what I experienced. I knew I wanted my children to have different than what I experienced, but I didn't know what that was. So where you were kind of like envisioning this idea of the world that Shay would create, I was kind of carrying the bricks with me and laying them in spaces that I thought were okay, which we're not always okay, right? Like it wasn't always okay. Um, Definitely put bricks down and pick them back up and kept walking with them. But it's interesting to me, the different perspectives that developed from the same place. And I think that we could probably say that for a lot of people around us, right? Like we've stayed in contact with a lot of people who we've grown up with, and you can kind of see sprinkles of what mindsets were available to us at the time.
Yeah.
Um, when did you know you could do it? You imagined it, you envisioned it. When did you know you could do it?
So there were a few very pivotal moments during my life where, the spiritual side of me is going to say where the ancestors sent very specific guidance
Mm-hmm.
to me. Um and the first person was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
where I had a friend who noted that, like I said, I wasn't going to college. I'm like, college is not my thing at the time. I was working two jobs, they were retail. That was where my mindset was,
Mm-hmm.
because it was consistent money.
Mm-hmm.
I had no responsibilities. I didn't have the same responsibilities as you, so that's one very different differentiator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then telling a friend that I wasn't going to college,
Mm-hmm.
and the way in which he
Mm-hmm.
responded to that was applying me to college behind my back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that was very paramount to me, that whole experience of going to my friend and being very confused, and like just in confidence saying to him, like, hey, I'm kind of getting these acceptance letters, and I'm not really sure why. And the very day he looked at me and said, like, I applied you, you dumb, like,
Mm-hmm.
smart to stay here. And that was very paramount for me, to have someone who in that moment I respected as friend, to say that they saw something in me. So that was very paramount. In that same instance, our principal had heard me tell friends, like, very out, like, we our words matter, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
had heard me say to friends, like, I wasn't going to college. And we not only respected her, we knew the impact that she had in so many lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she heard me say that, she actually called me into her office, and provided opportunity that was never provided to me, for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very paramount in my life. And so, I can really sit down and think about every single pivotal moment that propelled me forward as a level of belief, back down to my uncle being the first person to tell me that my grandmother manifested something greater for me specifically.
Mm-hmm.
That being my origin story, in spite of where we grew up, in spite of where we lived, you know, my uncle is an older elder to me now.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, for him to tell me that story, he told it to me all through college. He told it to me all through school. Didn't matter what our circumstances was, where he was in life. And my uncle would tell it the same exact way. So I knew it was true. And that was what propelled me. That was my foundation. In spite of my circumstances, that was my foundation.
That's interesting because I can think of we don't come from a trusting environment, right? We don't come from a trusting environment, and we are two people who respect loyalty, hold it dear. It's near to our hearts. You know, in a time and a space where we used ride or die and meant it. And you know, we can unpack this a little bit later. I don't use ride or die anymore because I'm not, like, you know, as a measure of self-care, that is not okay. But back then, that was our lingo, right? It was ride or die. And I
Yeah.
know who applied you to college. I'm not going to say his name, but I know who did it. And I know you stayed friends with him after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So um tell me about that trust. He knew enough about you to get through an application. He knew enough about you to put your personal information on the application. That means that he entered your space. And at 17, 18 years old, there was a level of trust that abided between the two of you that allowed you to actually go.
Yeah. 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 This this friend was like, going back to that ride or die
Mm-hmm.
limiting language
Mm-hmm.
that is oftentimes used in our community to hide bad behavior, right? Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
um and so the older you get, the more that you realize how powerful your words are, so you change the way that you engage in language, and you change the way that you speak. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing has always been consistent with this friend was, um you know, them being completely honest with me about who they were, flaws and all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think for me back then, having someone give me a choice of be my friend or not, this is who I am, gave the openness to say,
Mm-hmm.
well, I could tell him some stuff too, right?
Mm-hmm.
My applications came back incomplete because he didn't know my social. He knew everything else. And so that was the grievance. I was, back then it was paper.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to my friend thinking somebody has hacked me. Like somebody's like, yo, I think. And it was that, no, like I see. And not only was it him who made a promise beyond freshman year, right? Like, if you do this, I won't just leave you hanging.
Mm-hmm.
My principal did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you do this, I won't leave you hanging. And they had both at that point, and not just them, other
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people in my life had put their influence, their time, and their money where their mouth was, you
Mm-hmm.
know, to make sure. And that combined with the foundation of what my uncle constantly told me was, I mean, come on, Shay. that was the reflective moments that I constantly had. Come on, Shay.
Mhm. So what I hear in all that you have shared is how we pour into our people,
For sure.
young and old, matters. Who you tell me I am, even on the days that I don't believe it, who you tell me I am matters.
Yeah.
And I can remember who some of those people were for me. I had an English teacher in the seventh and eighth grade, Ida Benton, and she and I are still in contact till this day for some of the same reasons, right? She's the first person who told me that I wrote well, and she said it to me and she coveted my heart at a time where I was most fragile. Um, at a time where I had little friends. I was in transition and I was a very different person. Um, so if this was a sermon and we had 3 points, that's point number one. Um, who you say your people are matters, and they hear you, internalize, digest, and for many of us, we strive to be that thing that you said I was. And that can be negative or positive. So make sure it's positive.
Right. Ashe. And to add to that, what I have always found as the catalyst to all of these individuals in my space, related to me or not by blood, right? Um, is their desire to tell me often to find my own path.
Mm.
And the discovery in that for me
Mm-mm.
was who I continue to evolve to be, because it gave me the freedom to not, we had no blueprint.
Mm.
So
Right.
it gave me the freedom to create with audacity and
Mm-hmm.
disruption what I saw in myself, because I knew where my foundation came from.
Right. So in your journey, I'm going to fast forward a little bit and I want to start. So I've been using the word community for since December. I've been using the word community, but throughout life, just in my adulthood, community means a lot to me. Having the choice of community also means a lot to me. In 2025, the global word for Mental Health Awareness Month is community. So, the synergy there is just, it's profound to me. Um, when did community become important to you? And when I say community, I mean the one that you are building, because there are components of our community that we will never let go of, that we are Harlem for life, you know. Um, but I think that we have grown an appreciation for the idea that the nostalgia of the place that we came from is not the identity of the space that we drive from now. And so, when did the building of your community become important to you? And when did you know what it would look like for you?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part. When did it become important to me? Um Always.
Mm.
Um because I learned very early that community wasn't going to look like my family,
Mm.
perhaps.
Mm.
I learned that my community might look like, you know, you know, people in the moment, but maybe not people along the long-term journey.
Right.
So, I recognize that my learning that um I went into corporate at 14 years old,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the lessons that I learned from the tutelage of a woman of color at 14 years old in corporate were very different than I understand a lot of my friends experienced working in a summer youth environment, right? And so I enter the stage with that understanding that my perspective is that. But it is also being friends with and asking questions of people who don't have the same experience as me,
Mm-hmm.
and sharing my experience with them if they are open to.
Mm-hmm.
And so community has always been important because I am a natural collaborator,
Mm-hmm.
right? As it relates to my business models and how I do business, it is important for me to be able to collaborate messaging,
Mm-hmm.
because our communities need to hear, make it plain for me. Where's the help for me? And collaborating in all the ways that make sense for that message to be clear has always been important for me. um so that's the first part. And for me it was seeing um community. It was being introduced to a dance community, an
Mm-hmm.
art community, a poetry community, and realizing that those were very different communities that
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed for various reasons that fueled the way that I continue to evolve. And so community has always been ingrained. I don't think when we were younger we understood the language
Mm-hmm.
that it was community. It just felt authentic to
Mm-hmm.
who we
Felt like
were.
home.
It
Mm-hmm.
just felt like home. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so being able to put context around that, um, is where I think, and a lot of us, I think we strived and thrived and yearned for a sense of community outside of the community that we had to be in, the
Mm-hmm.
chaotic community, right? We wanted to. There was a level of bonding in that,
Mm-hmm.
but then there was this other piece that was around the art. And what do we do with that? What community, right? Do we have that? And so I think a lot of us have always yearned for community. We just now have the context around what to call it.
Yeah. Let's talk about colorism. You said that you entered into corporate America at 14.
Hmm.
So 14 for us, 33 years? No. Yeah. Yeah. Damn. 33 years ago. I
Hmm.
wanted to say my math was wrong.
No, no, it's accurate. It's about accurate, you know, about accurate.
Ooh. So, it is. I remember the light skin, brown skin, the dark skin, the kinky, the nappy, because it wasn't even kinky hair back then. It was the nappy hair. I remember those conversations. And I always joke. I wanted such a deep chocolate baby. Like, I just think the skin you live in is just so beautiful to me. And you gave me one of them. You did. I got one. But I you gave me one. But I also know that was a difficult space for you to navigate in corporate America, in our community. As we segue into the conversation about your own personal mental health and the dichotomy that was your two worlds, um, tell me a little bit about what colorism meant for you, how that showed up, and how you navigated that space.
Yes, yes. I am a Cameroonian, Bahamian New Yorker with a sister who is your complexion, who looks like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am raising the mirror opposite of my sister and in my children.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up, I think it took my sister and I, again, adults, to have conversations around. There were things that I just had no idea
Mm-hmm.
um that she felt as it relates. And there was a lot of conversation when we became adults around just her not knowing. But me not, I think I think there is something to be said about growing up in Harlem and really not caring what people think. And I say that in all love and foundationally who I am. You had to grow up with and that's your opinion kind of. And I think that helped me in the corporate space, and helped me as it relates to seeing the different ways that people treated women who were more melanated in my family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then how at one point it got cool to
Mm-hmm.
be a melanated
Mm-hmm.
sister because
Yeah, I remember when light skin went out. I was a little bit heartbroken, but
yeah, like dark skin came back in, and so we became cool again. So it was like, oh snap, like I'm back in, and I get to choose who I want.
right.
It became that kind of scenario. But you saw, I think, and I've had this conversation. I tell this story as it relates to my first interaction with colorism and racism
Mm-hmm.
was really at like the age of 11
Mm-hmm.
in Canada. Again, recognizing that my experience is very different than what others may have experienced. But for me, it was my entire baseball team showing up for me when one person called me the N-word.
Wow. Yeah.
And so if that is my shape, right, the way that I see how racism should be combated, it should be the non-black people showing up for the black people, not me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I said nothing and they all dropped everything and ran after.
Yeah.
And this is at 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so that made me a disruptor very early
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to colorism. And no, you're not. Yes, that's my sister with pride,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yes. And my sister was the same. What do you mean? Yes. You see the last names, that's my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I think having someone, my sister and I obviously grew up in the same household. So we both have very different stories, but growing up in the same household, you a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that was always consistent is that we always are going to ride for each other,
Mm-hmm.
because that's who we had when
Mm-hmm.
no one else was there. And so just having that, going back to that foundation of trust, having that one person that that you can go back to was paramount for me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I only have one older sister in life, biologically, and she's your complexion. So like my family is exactly in the same way. Um, Tell me your experience with anxiety and depression. When did it start? Um, when did you realize it enough to name it, right? And then what did you do?
Yeah. Um I think for a while I suffered with anxiety, but just didn't have the name
Mm-hmm.
for, like many of us growing up in the 80s in New York City with the parents and the experiences that we had. Um But my sister and I actually talked about this. One of the things that we were fortunate um was that my grandfather, who is and has always been our protector, would not let up on us having therapy.
Amen.
And so from the age of 9, I have always known that it was important to, in some way, I have journals from way back. My children are going to have a field day. Um, right?
I need you to come burn mine. They
Right.
ain't gonna have no field day.
Right. But shout out to the grandfathers who were the ultimate protectors, because my grandfather didn't let up on the fact that we needed to stay in therapy through the process that we were in. And so because that, again, that shaped my world, you know, going to college when I started to feel that anxiety, and it started to replay out into, you about to get kicked out of college, girl, right? um when I got the help, it was, oh, that's the name of that.
Mm-hmm.
And now I need to figure out the tools to help with what that looks like, for me personally. And from that point on, it has been a forever journey of breath work and mastering the breath, to get through any moments where there is anxiety, and therapy.
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
let's
Well, you
not
know, I'm a
forget.
huge proponent of therapy, but I'll be honest, like at that age, I was in therapy. I probably started therapy um maybe 14 to 15, 14, 13 to 14. I was a little bit older than you. And I went to therapy following a hospital stay um in the psychiatric side of the hospital at St. Luke's. And so I was automatically put into therapy. And my struggle with therapy was returning to the environment, the return.
Mhm.
Therapy at that time didn't work for me because I was consistently returning to the space that I felt boxed in. And so I got the tools and the seeds were planted, but there wasn't really a transformation for me at that point. Um, we always talk about how girls, adolescents, women need men in their lives. And in all of the stories that you've shared with us, you didn't mention a father. And I don't need an explanation to that. But what I do notice is that you have very strong men that showed up for you. And I think I want to highlight that because my experience with men at that age was very different, right? Like the experience I had with men in my life was different. I remember it's not too long ago, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, someone asked me, when you were in high school, did you feel pretty? And my response without thought was no, I felt fuckable. And I had to sit with that because it was an autonomic response. And I listened to the difference in your experience. And because I know you as intimately as I know you, I also can see how it colored your outcomes.
Yeah, it one of the advantages that I have is memory. and remembering what family looked like before everything went to shit. And so having my uncle go through his own personal storm, I started this by saying it didn't matter where he was in life. He wasn't always in my life physically, but it didn't matter where he was. I have letters from my uncle when I was like, college ain't for me. I need a job to help me. Like, yeah, time to go.
Stay your ass there.
Right? Like it was those, right? And because even you don't even say, like, we come from an era where it didn't matter where those elders were. They protected you. You respect them, right? You give a level of respect to your uncle. If he's in jail, it doesn't matter that. If he's writing you a letter that's giving you a charge and a reminder of what he told you 2 years ago and 2 years before that, and when you were 5 years old, and you remember it, and he's telling it the exact same way, it is him reminding you that you have a larger purpose. And he says it, like I said, it is that freedom of, I don't know why it was told to me to say it to you in that way. Only that it is for you. And that freedom, just that freedom, right? My grandfather being the person to be the dad. My dad was deceased. I never knew him, right? And so I didn't grow up with a dad who was in and out. I never had. So it was very different to not have, but then to have all these older men in your life elevate you in a way that they knew how to elevate you. So yeah, that coupled with, I understand going back to the environment. I too didn't have the rose colored scenario at home. Right? But what was my saving grace was having an adult that I trusted, who was an elder, that allowed for so much space for me to not have to spend in my environment, but to spend just breathing and being 14 and eating ice cream after school and having a peanut butter and jelly. So again, recognizing that wasn't everybody's experience, but how do I give back to students, and how do I give back to a community where this is my experience, and I recognize that it's not everybody's experience, and how do I give pieces of me to show people that it's possible? And that's what I decided to do when I went away to college, to make that my charge.
Amen. Before we start talking more about what you're doing now and what's going on, I want to talk a little bit about closing doors, because I think that you started this by saying, I've watched you evolve, and you've watched me evolve. I think we've also recognized the difficulty and the blessing of new and different segments of our lives. How do you know when it's time for you to end a chapter? How do you grieve that? And how do you honor it?
I first honor it.
Okay.
Because it's honoring myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I've been blessed to be an organizational and development practitioner who focuses on self-awareness. And so I live what I coach.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is really honoring my commitment to myself, to move in spaces that honor me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started this by saying, I receive what you've given to me in reflection of how you see me, because oftentimes we don't live in that. And I practice living in that. So I honor myself first. Um, and that comes in a number of different ways,
Mm-hmm.
In honoring myself, I grieve the process of needing to honor myself and close a door, close a business relationship, close anything that is required to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what that looks like is spending the time reflecting on the positives and the energy that you receive and the energy that you've given out, and honoring that and celebrating that. And making that a part of the grieving process. We oftentimes grieve the negative things and the things we feel offended by, but it's important to also grieve the respectful energy that you've given in any kind of situation. So I grieve that. um and that, again, that comes with a number of different things. And then I continue to honor where I am today. And where I am today is not where I was
Mm-hmm.
perhaps when that person, people, group, community encountered me. I don't have the same community that I had 14 years ago when my child was a preemie, right? I don't have that community anymore. I have a very different and evolved community. And so it is knowing when where your energy goes, everything flows. And where I put my energy has continued to be important to me. So I honor every single part of where I put that, because I know it is my charge. I've been told this all of my life, that it is my charge. And so again, when you know your foundation, it feels right when you need to move. Doesn't mean it's not hurtful, but it
Mm-hmm.
feels right.
Yeah, I think that is that was something I had to get used to. Right things hurting.
Yeah.
Sometimes the right things hurt, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It doesn't mean you have to take it back. It doesn't mean you have to rewind. You don't have to move different. You don't have to squash you. You don't have to hold your breath. You don't have to do any of those things. Right things hurt sometimes. So that's point number 2 in our sermon, all right? Y'all
Yeah.
paying attention? Point number 2 is one, let's recap. One is how you talk about your people is heard, internalized, and kept with you. And point 2 is right things can hurt sometimes, and that is okay.
I should.
Um,
I think so. And I think, it's important to know that the way that we react is based on what we know and how we grew up. And,
Absolutely.
and unless we look at mindset as a part of generational wealth,
Mm.
and not just the financial piece, but passing down a mindset
Mm.
that is very different as a part of the generational wealth conversation,
Yes.
it feels different.
It feels very different. Poverty of the mind is one of the most depressing things you can ever encounter
Yeah.
because If your mind is poor, everything that comes from you is poor. And
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what's in your bank account.
doesn't
But
matter.
every thought, every idea, everything that comes from you is poor if you live in this space of poverty of the mind. That is one thing that I hated about living in Reading. Like, it was the most impoverished mindset I had ever encountered. And that's saying a lot coming from where we grew up. But it
Yeah,
was like, it
yeah.
was the most impoverished mindset that I had ever encountered. And it was so hard for me to digest that when people said no, my community felt there was no alternative. It was like this depressing feeling that I would get, like, but there is a way. There has to be a way. There's a way for
I
you to
want
get.
to live in that for a moment, because there was a question you asked me earlier, and there was something that you offer. I do this.
I'm listening.
There's something that you offer that you didn't feel moved in that way,
Mm.
but you did, and you did something about it, right? It comes at the time that call to move out of what doesn't feel authentic to the DNA that you have. Like, this just does not feel right to me.
But it was not on behalf of myself. It was on behalf of my children.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but it was never. It helped me. It helped me because I was the collateral growth to the parent I knew I did not want to be.
Mhm.
Right? I was the collateral growth to that. Um I don't know that I would have had the same strength if I was not advocating for people who I was determined to give something else to. And I guess we'll never know the answer to that, right? We'll never really know the answer to that. But I view my journey truly as collateral growth to my 31-year-old and my 26-year-old and my 24-year-old and my 18-year-old, because those people didn't ask to be here. And even on the days that I got it wrong, it wasn't because of lack of effort. It was always the idea that what was given to me should not and would not be given to them. And so that was my driving force. My driving force was, okay, I'm 16, but I'm somebody's mama.
Mhm.
And that was my push. Um, Community leader, organizational development, turning corporate, nonprofit, hospital, law firms. I could probably keep going. Hotels, on the list of environments that you have stuck your foot in, and eventually your foot on the next of. you know I've watched you grow. First of all, congratulations on being 100% you,
Oh,
being
Shay.
the Dames Group LLC 100% of the time.
Oh, Shay. Woo, woo,
um,
woo, woo.
I watched the journey. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of I've always been proud of you. I've always been proud of how you've navigated your space. um
Thank you.
what does it mean to you? What is the mission of the Dames Group? Tell us that.
Oh, I first thank you for all of that love. We are, excited to embark on a journey that um feels authentically who we are in a space and a time where it's needed. And so what we do at the Dames Group is we help organizations reimagine learning experiences. And that is far beyond developing a training for your managers, and coaching your leaders. Our foundational niche is self-awareness, and everything that we craft, every topic from active listening to cybersecurity and everything in between has a foundational niche of emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, and self awareness. And it is important for us to highlight that in a space, in a time where we are talking to business owners about the freedom of owning a business. Well, that comes with being real with yourself about what it means to own and operate a business. It sounds really intriguing, until you really get into the meat of what it means to be in business for yourself. And so I am excited to be able to leverage all walks of life, all walks of my partnerships and collaborative networks and relationships, and leap in a way that has been written on my wall in my office. The visionary that I am since 2018, and really putting some focus time to what it looks like to create a product and be a vessel to organizations in this space looking to develop people for real. You know, it sounds real cute to say I work with a training company, but when a training company is really going to push you on self-awareness, when we talking about cybersecurity, it looks different when you work with the Dames Group. And so that's what we do.
Talking about how your trauma shows up, how your drama shows up,
Absolutely.
all of it.
Absolutely.
All of
How
it
all of
right
that,
there.
before we even talk about this cybersecurity thing, before we even talk about this active listening thing, before we even talk about engaging your managers and developing your managers, let's talk about how self-aware they are. And let's talk about where they are as it relates to a self-awareness spectrum, so we know that who we're talking to and we meet them where they are. I think um, amazingly enough, a lot of companies pull things off the shelf and they deliver them to organizations. And what we do at the Dames Group is really meeting everyone in the room where they are. Once we know that, we craft something that aligns with the experience. That's why it's not just the training. And so, we proudly have helped many organizations in the corporate space, both internally with myself as a leader, an executive internally, or externally as a contractor, a number of organizations, and we continue to do that today. And so I'm excited and excited to grow beyond where we are.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Tell me about Bahaya Menina.
Yes, Bahaya Manina. So Bahaya Manina, talking about self-awareness, as a self-awareness coach, someone who helps other people uh look in the mirror, and think very differently about choices and decisions in business, etc. I had to do that in 2019 when my own children faced anxiety, and depression, like so many other humans, and children living through what we called COVID. So it feels like it was eons ago, right? But watching my children go through that process of not being able to graduate with their friends after doing 5 years of school with them, and doing virtual kindergarten, and all of these things that were um, me being at home trying to develop, in a role in business, but also watching my children. Bahia Menina was born. And it was born because one of my children is both of my children are amazing artists, but one of my children really channeled her emotions through art during that time. And sat down with them, and the way that I'm a manifester, right? And so, in different parts of my office, you have sticky notes of just notes to myself to keep going and keep pushing, and just personal notes. um and one of these was to create something with the girls that they could use as a way to just be creative during COVID. And so mirroring or collaborating with what I do as my manifestation sayings and the artistic ability of my children, Bahia Menina was born. And so Bahia is actually the middle name of my oldest daughter. And it means beautiful in Swahili. And Menina is the middle name of my youngest child, and it means highly favored little sister. And so Bahia Menina, the Bahia Menina brand, supports youth and families in mental wellness tools and leverages our retail store to do so in fashion and in art. And so we have a number of different sayings, things that got us through, things that we said in the house to each other, things that I've said to myself. So we have a queen care line, a line that is designed for moms and queens, to elevate their mindset and their thinking about mental wellness. And then there are things that my children created, and things that my children created, and designs that they've created from their perspective. And so the creation of Bahia Menina was really dope in that, being a business owner locally, I had the opportunity of going to a lot of local school board meetings and talking to a lot of youth about Bahia Menina and their thoughts about it, and hearing grassroots seriously about what youth think about being creative through a retail brand, and wearing things like, my anxiety is not a crutch, and wearing things like I own my own peace. And so, how does that make you feel as a 16-year-old wearing something like that and being able to learn grassroots from those from youth locally? So yeah, it's my brand, my labor of love. I have two co-CEOs, that always want to get paid, but I don't want to do nothing.
You using their product. I'm on my niece's side on that.
I always want to get paid.
What I like about Bahia Menina is that we were talking about this earlier on, and at an age, first of all, I know it's implied, but we grew up in the era where you got home when the street light came on, your phone was still attached to the wall, there was no internet, the IBM computer still took up a whole room. And I know that feels like eons ago for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
but it really isn't, right? And so at that time, we were not naming anxiety. We were not naming depression. We were not naming these things. If you knew somebody who was manic depressive, it was like, oh my God, like it was the end of the world, because we didn't, or schizophrenic, you didn't have an understanding of really what those things meant. You didn't have an understanding of how manageable all of these mental illnesses are as long as you have the right support, right? We didn't know what that looked like. And so it's encouraging that youth in school now, one, know the name, just simply know the name of what their bodies are doing, right? I am anxious. Being able to say that and to confidently own that and know that that is a part, right? That is not the whole of me, it's not the sum of me, it doesn't speak to my worth, it doesn't speak to who I am, but I have to deal with this part of me. And when this part shows up, this is how you can help me, because that's how I see the conversation going, right? The conversation for me is not that I'm just naming this part, but now how can you help me, right? Like who can help me? What does that look like? Um, and how does that help? How do I need that? Do I need to be left alone? Do I need someone to talk to? Do I need someone to just hold my hand silently? And I think having young people willing to even wear the brand, even to willing to listen to the conversation, willing to raise their hand and say, that is me. Yes, that is me. And be okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not be bullied, not feel like they have no one to talk to, not feel like they don't have an outlet. Um, I think that is one of the more beautiful parts of the evolution of human beings. The light that we shine, even this podcast, like sitting down and having a conversation that is televised or computerized or whatever word you want to use, right?
Out in the nets.
It's in the interwebs of the world, right? And not feel ashamed to say, yes, I was hospitalized when I was, 14, 15 years old. Yes, I experienced this. Yes, I was anxious. Yes, I've been depressed. Those are the beautiful things that have come out of being okay in your own skin. And as we wrap this up, that's community. Community are the people and the places and the entities that we decide are in our back pocket, where I can go and stand straight face, flat foot in my authentic self, even when I don't feel my greatest. And we need more of those communities. You've been that community for me. I've been that community for you, but we need more of those communities where the skin I live in on a good day or a bad day can show up to that safe place and still be affirmed and still be heard and still be given the drive that we need to go forward, to move forward, all of those things. Um, and so I don't know. I'll give the last words to you, but that to me is what teaching community is. And as you close us out, Shay, and you give your last words, I also would like you to please share the Bahia Menina website where people can reach and purchase and support, as well as the Dames Group.
That's Shay. Um, I want to, thank you for the time today. But to add to what you said, what I have learned from a lot of the leaders in my world is everybody is not going to be a part of your community.
That's right.
And my attorney actually said it's like there's going to be a lot of people that's not a part of your community. Right? Um, and so it is that combination of knowing when you're in the community that is right for you in the moment versus the community that feels like soul food to you. And giving yourself grace in either or. Because one is going to be a part of who you are when you are at your best and you are not at your best. They're going to still show up for you. And the other one is going to serve its purpose in your life and in your space. And I think if we look at the way that we community and we understand that it's important to have several communities for several reasons, and focus our time there, and not trying to bring everybody into your community because it's where you are. You have that focused community, and then those people that feel like soul food. Those are where I operate authentically. And I think everybody in my life knows where they live in that space, and it allows me to lend to a part of myself where, like, no, you come from a place where we have this swag, and we have this knowing, and we have this, and take that with you into these other communities that you're in, because you got this. It's important to have your people remind you of that, and you also remind them of who they are and whose they are, and the reasons that they are here to be empowered.
I like that. I see what you did there. Thank you so much, my sister. This has been great. Thank you guys for tuning in, listening in. Join us again on Saturday when we will be talking about self-care, um, and how we take care of ourselves, and how taking care of ourselves takes care of our minds. Have a wonderful night, guys. Bye.
Ace.